Freedom of speech is the foundation of all human rights, period. And this is about to become very muddied for you because Australia, like the entire West, is under a coordinated assault to make you shut up in the name of, can you guess? Anyone? Safety. Online safety. So the new idea is it's incredibly dangerous, not just unpleasant or rude, but dangerous. More dangerous than a brown snake, actually. For you to say something that the people in charge don't like, for you to criticize the ruling regime in your country. It's dangerous. And in fact, of course, it's dangerous to be prohibited from criticizing the people in charge. And not only is it dangerous, it tells you everything about what they think of you. Because the basis of your humanity is the fact that you are unique, because you were created uniquely. You are not like everybody else. You are you. God created you as you. And as a mark of that, you have opinions that are not exactly the same as everyone else's, because you are not an object. You are not a widget in a bin awaiting assembly. You are a human being. And no, you are not a slave. You are a free human being. And the mark of your freedom is the right to say out loud what your conscience dictates. Like, I disagree. That's the most revolutionary thing you can do. And if you find yourself unable to say that, then you know you are no longer human, you are a slave. It's just that simple. And they will tell you, and trust me, they will, I can guarantee you this, because I know they very well, because they, them, so good! So good! Exactly. They / them live in my country too. I mean, the fascists is who I'm really talking about, because they are fascists. And the fascists will tell you that speaking out loud is incredibly impolite, is unpatriotic, and is a threat somehow. And they're partly right. It is a threat. It's a threat to them. And if there's one thing they need a lot more of, it's to be threatened. Trust me. Because if you don't threaten them, they won't stop until you're fully enslaved. Right? And it begins with speech. If you're not allowed to say what you think, you are not a free human being, you are a slave. The stakes are that high. Repeat that to yourself. Write that on a piece of paper and tape it to your fridge. Because nothing is truer than that. And so anyone who tells you that you are not allowed to express your conscience, what you believe to be true, is in fact treating you as a slave and himself as your master, and is therefore by definition your enemy. Not your opponent, not someone who disagrees with you, actually just the opposite. Someone who refuses to disagree with you because he refuses to engage with you, he refuses to speak with you, he refuses to hear you. He does not consider you human. Stop barking. He's treating you like an animal. That's what he's saying to you. And the only real question is, are you going to put up with that? That actually is the question. And it's a much bigger question than who you're going to vote for. So we have a couple big companies are buying all the residential housing. So people can't buy houses. Just so like a couple people can become super, super rich. And they're wrecking American society by doing that. No one ever talks about that. It's all about Juneteenth or some ridiculous holiday whose only point is to make Americans hate each other on the basis of race. So I'm very upset about that. My strong advice to you would be do not play along with that. Don't let them do that. And next time someone lectures you about colonialism or like something your great-great-grandparents did or somebody else's great-great-grandparents did, why don't you just shut up, actually? I'm not going to take that from you. You're trying to make us hate each other on the basis of our race. I know what you're doing. You're like, oh, no, we feel so bad about this group or that. You don't feel bad at all. You've done nothing to help that group at all. You've helped no one ever. You're hurting people for your own benefit. And I know what you're doing, and I'm not playing along. You can't guilt me into this race war crap. It's bad, I reject it. I think God created everybody. I treat everybody as an individual on the basis of how they behave. And I'm just not playing along. And if you... Well, exactly right. Like what? Don't put up with it. Don't be embarrassed. The point is not to solve problems from 300 years ago. Those are unsolvable. They were 300 years ago. Everyone's dead. The point of these conversations is to make people hate each other within the country so they don't notice that the leadership is wrecking the country and getting rich while they do it. Obviously, don't fall for that. So I would just say, stop. We treat everybody equally on the basis of their behavior because everybody is created by God. Everyone's morally equal. They may not be equal in ability, they're not, but they're equal in moral value. Every person's equal in moral value. They're human beings. You can't treat them as objects or animals. They're people, period. And I judge people based on how they act. And I don't want to hear any more race talk from you, you pig.
Anyway.
I was in a plane, actually, that crashed once. And it was very obvious that it was going down. And there had been a catastrophic failure on the plane. And it was in the Middle East. And I said that I was like in the first seat on the plane. And I remember it was Pakistan Airline. And I said to the purser, the head guy, and it was clearly going down. And it turns out it was going down. And I said to the guy, what's going on? He goes, everything is fine. Everything is fine. I've never forgotten that. And it was so demonstrably unfine. There's never been a less fine situation. People were weeping. All the Pashtuns in back were crying out to Allah. I thought it was great. Honestly, I admired that. I was thinking to myself, well, I'm like Church of England. Do I have a God to talk to at this point? You better find him. But the guy in charge was completely committed to the ludicrous proposition that everything was fine. As the plane was like falling backwards out of the sky, everything is fine. Really sort of saying it to himself more than the rest of us. Yeah, it's okay, it's okay. Dude, you're on fire, it's not okay.
And in the past, you've talked about how white Australians, Americans, Europeans are being replaced by non-white immigrants in what is often referred to as the Great Replacement Theory. This is the same...
Have I said that whites are being replaced?
Well...
I don't think I said that.
Well, it's been mentioned on your show 4,000 times. And
really, when did I say that?
On your show.
I said whites are being replaced?
You have said that before.
Really?
Yeah.
I would challenge you to cite that, because I'm pretty sure I haven't said that. I said native-born Americans are being replaced, including blacks.
Native-born Americans.
Native-born Americans.
And
Americans black Americans have been, African Americans have been in the United States for, in many cases, their families over 400 years. And their concerns are every bit as real and valid and alive to me as the concerns of white people whose families have been there 400 years. So I've never said that whites are being replaced. Not one time. And you can't cite it.
Untrue.
So we just met, but when our relationship starts with a lie, it makes it tough to be friends. So
you've been lying
let's
about
pull
my
that back.
press
I'm
gallery
happy to
colleagues
explain
all
what I
morning
do
as well,
think.
So.
Well, you actually can't say it because I didn't say it, and I don't believe it. And I'm telling you that to your face, so why don't you just accept me at face value? My concern is that the people who are born in the country are the main responsibility of its leaders. And as noted earlier, when those leaders shift their concern from the people whose responsibility it is to take care of to people around the world to put their priorities above that of their own citizens, that's immoral. And they are being replaced in my country, people who are born in the United States. And the birth rate tells the whole story. They're not at replacement rate. And so the US population is growing because we're importing people from other countries. And my view is that happy people have children. And a functioning economy allows them to do that. And we don't have that. And so you need to fix the economy and fix the culture and make it so that people who want to have kids can. You don't just go for the quick sugar fix of importing new people. Like, that's my position. And if you think that's racist, that's your problem.
I never called you a racist.
But of course you are suggesting, and
well,
I must say, one of the reasons people don't like people like you in the media is that you never say exactly what you mean. Your slurs are all by implication, and you're about to tell me the Great Replacement Theory is racist or anti-Semitic, whatever. I've said what I've said to you right now like 100 times in public. I hope to, if I live long enough, to say it 100 more times. I think it's completely honest and real, not racist or scary. It's factually true. It's not a theory, it's a fact. And the whole point of your question was to be like, you're a scary racist.
Well, I haven't
And
actually
my
finished
response
my
is, no, I'm not. Okay, well, how about no more lying in your questions, and then I'll answer it.
Okay, well, This is the same theory, or as you say, idea, that has inspired the New York Buffalo shooting where 11 black Americans were killed.
On.
Two
You know
white
what I mean?
Americans were killed.
Like,
And it's also
okay,
inspired...
it's not, first of all...
It's inspired one of the worst Australian guns
How do
of
they
all
get
time
people
to
this
shoot
stupid in the media? I guess it doesn't pay well. Look, I'm sorry. I've lived among people like you for too long, and I don't mean to call you stupid. Maybe you're just pretending to be, but I'm totally against violence. I'm totally against the war in Ukraine, for example, which doubtless you support. And like all dutiful liberals, support more carnage. I don't. I hate mass shootings, actually. Nothing I said, what does it mean to inspire something? My views are not bigoted against any group. They're honest, they're factual. That's not hate, that's reality. And my views derive from my deep concern for Americans, actually. Americans aren't having kids because they can't afford to, and nobody in charge cares. And so that's my position. That doesn't inspire mass shootings. How dare you try to tie me to some lunatic who murdered people? How dare you, actually? And in fact, I mean, do you know what I mean? I'd be like, Hitler wore those shoes. A lot of people are saying that you're like Hitler. Can you explain those shoes? Hitler wore exactly the same shoes, and you're like, I've got nothing to do with Hitler. Well, that's how I feel about your absurd, disingenuous question.
Right, so therefore you support gun control?
What? I thought it couldn't get dumber, but it did. No, I don't support disarming law-abiding people so they can't defend themselves. So the government has a monopoly on violence? I don't think so. First of all, in my country, that's illegal, as you know. But moreover, it should be illegal in every country. A sovereign person has the right to defend himself and his family. Period. And that said, I'm totally opposed to harming anyone. Anyone. Have you been calling? Are you concerned about the war in Ukraine? And the countless innocents being murdered there every single day? I doubt you are. Probably Putin bad. I am. I'm a Christian. I hate violence. I hate mass shootings. I have guns at home, and often on my person when I'm in the United States, I'm proud to say, because I want to defend myself and those I love against violence. That's the point. I'm not perpetrating crimes. I'm not shooting strangers. I'm defending what I love. And if you're against that, I guess I would ask why. Why would you be against that?
Well, so you don't think you harbor any kind of responsibility for these hate crimes?
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be charitable. I was like, maybe you're just pretending to be dumb. Now I don't think it's an act.
Do not take anybody who lectures you about democracy at face value. And whatever you do, don't give them the upper hand. Don't let them occupy the moral high ground, because they don't deserve it. And don't, by the way, let the media occupy the moral high ground either. I think it's really important. I don't think you should go out of your way to be cruel to people. I was mean to one of your reporters the other day. I actually felt guilty about it. As a Christian, no, I did. So, and girl had no idea where she was, and I was barking at her and calling her names. No, I'm serious. I said to my wife, that was not Christian behavior, and I'm sorry. And my wife said, well, she deserved it. Yeah, okay, but I still shouldn't have done it. But what I should have done and did do, and you should do, is offer no undeserved respect to anyone. Respect is earned. It doesn't convey automatically, okay? And so people will show up in your life or on your television with titles. I'm a reporter for ABC. I'm Prime Minister. Okay, great. But that doesn't mean I respect you. You have to earn that. You have to show me that you're a person of wisdom and good faith, who doesn't hate me, who wants to improve my life and the lives of my children, wants to help my country. And you have to demonstrate that through your actions, not just your words. And so the idea that you can just show up with a badge that says reporter or prime minister and I have to kiss your ass, no. I'm not doing that, because I'm a free man. And so I think it's really important, and I think Australians are probably a little better at this than most people, because it is famously an informal culture and an egalitarian culture, and I love that about it, where they call their mates these vulgar names and everyone laughs. It's like so great. But you should say that to the prime minister too, actually. You should. You should. Not as an attack, but just to let the prime minister know that, okay, you're the prime minister, great, congratulations, but you're no better than me, and you have no more authority than I do. And the media, I think it's really important to show maximum disrespect. I think you're disgusting and stupid. I think you're acting against my interest. I think you're dishonest. You're a worm, and I'm paying for your job, and that's immoral. And no, I'm serious. You should let them know that I have no respect for you at all, and, prove me wrong. I think you should start the conversation that way, because if you don't, what happens is, and I've seen this a lot my whole life, is they come in with such maximum aggression that they immediately occupy the moral high ground, and you're, as we say in wrestling, fighting off your back. You're at an immediate disadvantage. They show up and they're like, well, I'm an expert. I'm an authority. I'm an epidemiologist. Take the shot. And in a free country, of course, the right response is, I'm so glad that you went to medical school, you got elected prime minister, got a job at the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Wow, congratulations. But you're going to have to prove to me through reason that what you're telling me to do is a good idea for me. It's not enough to wave your credentials in my face and say you're acting on behalf of science or the people or the free press or whatever. That's just not enough for me. You're going to have to prove it to me. And I think it's really important, because if you don't do that, what happens is they roll in and they're like, all right, everyone has to do something awful. We're going to take all your money away, or let the entire population of some African country move to your neighborhood on public assistance. And you're like, what? Shut up, racist. And you're like, oh, wow. I don't want to be a racist, because no normal, decent person wants to be. Of course, it's like the last thing you want to be. God created everybody. Everybody has identical moral value, no matter where they're from, no matter their intelligence, no matter their aptitude. Their value is inherent. That's what decent people believe. And so you have to treat every person as a human being. So being called a racist it's not at all upsetting to the people who throw that word around. They don't care at all. They are racist, actually. They just don't care, because they don't believe in the inherent value and dignity of every human being at all. That's why they're pushing the deaths of human beings on people. They just don't care about people. But decent people do care about other people. And so they don't want to be called that. I don't want to be called that. In fact, I've been called that so many times that I had to take stock and ask myself, am I a racist? No, I'm serious. If someone calls you names, I think it's important, if you're a reflective person, to ask, why are they calling me that? Do I seem that? Am I that? Deep down, take stock. And I did that. I mean it. And no, I'm not, actually. I have all kinds of, I don't like middle-aged, unmarried, white female lawyers, but that doesn't make me, I don't. And I'm a bigot. And I've met some good ones, but in general, it's a loathsome group, and I just noticed that, okay? So if you're asking, am I a bigot? Yeah, I am. Not in a conventional way. But the point is, they're not calling you that because they believe it. They're calling you that to disarm you and to subdue you and to make you obey through moral blackmail, obviously. And it is obvious when you think about it for a second. The people they're calling names tend to be, I have noticed, the best. Well, I'll speak for America. In my country, the people who are attacked most often in public turn out to be, not coincidentally, the best people in the country. That is just true. I've noticed that. You're fired! I've heard that before. It's funny you mentioned it. By the way, it's liberating to be fired. I would recommend it to anybody. I really would. I mean it. I would. The worst things are usually the best things. And I would say that too. This is obviously a moment of great sadness for people in my country, as you see the institutions that you really believed in sincerely, in a patriotic, unthinking, childlike way, speaking for myself, exposed as corrupt. And you're like, wait a second, the CIA killed Kennedy? What else is fake? It really is. It's a bewildering experience. I hope you never have it. But on the other hand, it's sort of great to go through a moment like this, because it forces you to put your priorities in order. Getting fired, getting sick, losing a loved one, these are the tragedies of life, which most people have to go through, and no one would choose to go through them. But they're also the clearest moments, and they're the only moments when you grow it all and become a better person. So I would strongly recommend, I hope everyone in this room gets fired immediately. No, just kidding. I do think words are the most important tool or weapon. Well, you guys have no weapons, no offense. So it's really the only weapon you have. I can't resist. I know you hate me for saying this. Don't ever give your guns up. Like, what? Oh, it's for your safety. Okay. It's so funny. You can have a brown snake in your garage and it's no big deal. But it's like, someone's going to fire and lock it up. It's hilarious. Oh, propaganda works. Anyway, sorry. I'm sure you hate me for saying that. But I love you anyway. No, but I would say more important than firearms, if I'm being totally honest, are words, is truth. I mean, it's really the only thing that endures. If you think of all the civilizations that have risen and fallen, many of whom we know nothing about at all, not even their names, but countless civilizations for the past 5,000 years at least, probably much longer, and the only thing that survives of any of them, other than the archaeological record, are the words, which form the basis of the world's largest religions to this day. Like, words endure. Words change the human heart. Weapons don't, actually. You can't convert people by force. You can get them to say things, you can get them to take the facts, but you can't get them to believe something, actually. You can't change their conscience. Only words do that. Words are... the ancient Hebrews considered the words holy, like imbued with a spiritual power. A word, articulating something out loud, changed everything. And by the way, we see that in our own lives. That's just factually true. If you're married and you're in an argument with your spouse whom you love more than anyone, but if you get mad enough and you say something awful out loud, it can never be taken. It changes your relationship. And so does saying a beautiful thing. So does expressing love to somebody changes your relationship. Articulating something changes the world. And that's why that's the first thing they want to stop you from doing, is talking. And that's why that's the one thing you can never stop doing, is talking out loud. Not in a bellicose way, not in a menacing way, not in a threatening way, but in a straightforward, self-confident, honest way. That is the way. In a polite, dignified way.
So you claim to be a fly fisherman. But I've never seen you catch a decent fish. Why is that?
As noted, there are two. Do they have fly fishing in Australia? No, it's not huge, but it is an honorable way to fish. It's not the most productive way to fish, to put it mildly. Fly fishing is one of those things. The beauty of fly fishing is its inherent pointlessness. It really is. There's no point to fly fishing. 99% of the time you put the fish back, which is not something that we can do at bird hunting. When my girls were little, I'd go bird hunting a lot, and they'd be like, "Do you kill birds?" No, it's hunt and release. We shoot them, we just put them back. They were like 12 before they figured that wasn't true. But fly fishing, it is true. You put the fish back, you fish with this ungainly thing where you kind of swing your arm out and this thing flies around, and you get hooked in the face about every 5 casts. And the truth is, the fish don't like it at all. And so they rarely bite your fly. And yet, that's why it's compelling, because you're just there for the nature. It forces you to pause and assess what's right around you, which is the main reason I love Australia. It's why I think the people are so nice, is because it's not crap. Every single person I've met here has been excited about the animals here. Really excited. Did you see that butterfly? I was like, I'm sorry, did you say naked woman? No, butterfly! Really, butterfly? Butterfly! Like this guy, you guys were so excited about a butterfly, a blue butterfly, that he got me excited about the blue butterfly.
Yeah.
It was incredible. The more time you spend enjoying, like truly enjoying, God's creation, the landscape, the water, the mountains, the animals, the happier you are, the more grounded you are. That brings you back to equilibrium.
I'm interested in your position on Putin. Many people in this crowd would adore conservative prime ministers in this country like John Howard, Tony Abbott, mainstream right-wingers like Boris Johnson, Australian Liberals, some of their MPs are in the crowd, are vehemently anti-Putin. They believe he's a reprehensible figure who doesn't believe in the values of conservatism, such as the rule of law and democracy, which gives us the freedoms we have in our country. I'm interested, do you feel any level of shame or regret that you were termed a useful idiot, and then post your interview, Vladimir Putin himself said in his Russian media that he was surprised at how weak your questions were. And he also said that you were wrong when you said that no other journalist had asked to interview him. He said, that's not true. We only thought Tucker was the only person to report fairly.
Wait, I thought that you were describing Putin as a psychopathic liar, and yet now you're taking his word for things?
Do you...
Let me just quickly unpack your absurd soliloquy if I can. First, I'm stuck on the idea that Boris Johnson is a right-winger. Do you know Boris Johnson? I do. Boris Johnson is a criminal buffoon who, like so many who claim to love Ukraine, is single-handedly responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian men in this war that Ukraine cannot win. And I would refer you to Wikipedia. How many more people does Russia have than Ukraine? Do you know? 100 million. 100 million. And in a land war, that's a relevant number. It is not possible for Ukraine to beat Russia. The best they can do is sue for peace. That's been known, including by Zelensky, who wanted that since the early days of this conflict. And Boris Johnson, on orders from the Biden administration, shut down, and this is not a disputed fact, this is a fact, admitted by everybody now, shut down the peace negotiations almost 2 years ago. And Ukraine has been completely destroyed. And now Zelensky has passed a law allowing foreign corporations to own land there. So you tell me what Ukraine is going to look like in 30 years when all of it is owned by BlackRock and multinational corporations and its population is not Ukrainian, okay? So the tragedy of what's happened in Ukraine, orchestrated by the Western powers, including your government, and I hope you do, and driven by my government, I feel shame about it, I hope you do too, is really one of the great crimes of my lifetime. So the idea that somehow if you're against that, you're for Putin, well, of course, that's absurd. And by the way, speaking of your friend Boris Johnson, he attacked me, of course, ad hominem, and so I called him. He was a journalist, not surprisingly, a man of low character, not shocking. And so I called him and I said, well, you've called me all these names. Why don't you sit down for a conversation? I happen to be in your rainy, depressing slum, London, and we could have a conversation. And he said, I won't do that unless you pay me $1 million. That's a fact. That's a non-disputed fact. I have the text messages. So if that is the credible source of the slur that, look, if I were a toady of Putin or I loved Putin, I would just say so. Because why do I care? I've already been fired. I don't work for anybody. I have no incentive. And by the way, it's perfectly fine if people love Putin. Well, I don't understand what that has to do with anything. We are citizens of different countries. We should judge first and foremost our own leaders. How's our country doing? How are my children doing? What's their future look like? None of that has anything to do with Putin, except to the extent that you all, this country, sit back, your government allows the Biden administration to push us into nuclear war, which is where we are right now, right on the cusp of it. And somehow that's not a story. The idea is that Putin doesn't respect human rights or the rule of law. Okay, well, just today, Julian Assange was released after 12 years in custody, and your government did nothing. The UK made it possible, and the United States demanded it. You tell me how that's consistent with the rule of law or democracy. It's not. It's ruled by the intel agencies. It's lawlessness, and it's a crime. So I'm not saying that we're morally equivalent to Putin. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is our concern should be first and foremost, how are our countries run? And we give our own leaders a pass time and time again because they point to some other creep on the world stage and say, he's bad. Kim Jong-un is bad. Well, yeah, of course he's bad. That's why I don't live in North Korea. That's why I don't live in Russia. I have no interest in living in Russia. But the point is, you're bad too. And the fact that he's bad does not allow you to continue being bad. What? And the last thing I will say that I really feel deeply and I really resent on an emotional level, and you'll pardon my passion, I don't know you, I'm sure we'd be very close friends if we did know each other, but I really resent what I have seen across the West in the past 15 years, and it's a sea change from my youth when my father was a reporter, this alignment between media organizations and the government. I find disgusting, actually. I think it's a perfect inversion of what you're supposed to do. If you're a journalist, your job is to challenge power on behalf of the powerless. It is not to align with the powerful against the powerless. And that is precisely what you have done. I watched your ABC this morning in my hotel room for about 20 minutes until I looked around for a vomit bag. And I watched, it was one of the most grotesque, I couldn't even believe it was real. The first story, this is unbelievable. The first story was Assange. God bless them. That is the biggest story. The second story was a family of 4 found dead in a house. I think in a suburb of Sydney, but it may have been Melbourne. I beg your pardon. But 4 Australians found dead of what they suspected was a drug OD. Apparently they've been taking a new synthetic opioid that has emerged in Australia and is killing people. Now, this is a huge problem where I live, much bigger than here, but I'm familiar with it. And the reporter said it's probably the synthetic opioid and it's been seen and they're dead. On to the next story. The next story was the Australian government's new law that will require a prescription to buy nicotine products. And we were treated to a 15-minute lecture on ABC, whatever the hell that is, about how nicotine is dangerous and we need to keep it out of the hands of Australians. And I'm like, wait a second. Nicotine, first of all, is not dangerous. That's not true. That's factually incorrect. You know nothing about the science, A. B, compared to what? Compared to what? Oh, we have this new synthetic opioid that's killing people. The government, not too concerned. What they're really concerned about is that people might be using nicotine, which, by the way, has the byproduct of raising testosterone levels and making people a little harder to command. That's a massive threat! So this is the point where the media gets involved and says, wait a second, let's chart the death toll from vaping versus fentanyl. Maybe one's a little worse than the other. And what exactly are you doing about it? Why don't you press your ministers and your prime minister, like, what are you doing about it, about drug use? And the answer is nothing. Instead, they're hassling adults who want to use nicotine, which I would highly recommend to every person in this room as a life-enhancing, God-given chemical. That's just my view. But I'm like, a media should be like holding these people to the fire on that. I was fired over a year ago, so I don't have to like worry about this or be defensive about it because I don't have a job. So there is a certain freedom in unemployment. And so I sympathize with you guys who work for these companies that are like truly corrupt and you sort of know that, but you don't want to deal with it because you've got kids and a mortgage. I get it. I've been there. But let's just be honest. Everybody else knows what it is. Everyone else knows how corrupt you are. And so there's a reason they have contempt for you. I'm just saying.
There's a spiritual element here, obviously. If your goal is to hurt people, prevent them from having children, and destroy things that are beautiful, that's not a political agenda, actually. That's a spiritual agenda. And you're on the wrong side of it. That's just a fact. I'm not pretending to understand how exactly that works. In fact, I believe it because I don't understand how it works. Because destroying beauty doesn't make people rich, actually. There's no profit motive in that. There's no benefit to anyone. It's killing. And in the end, that doesn't help. So if you're dedicated to destroying people and beauty, you're probably working on behalf of spiritual forces, whether you know it or not. I believe that, because I don't see any kind of explanation, material explanation, that makes sense. But it almost doesn't matter what the motive is. It's happening. It's incredibly obvious as you travel, particularly to the English-speaking countries, the 5 of them, the 5 Eyes as they're called, because they're all in an intelligence agency agreement, as you know, which is why this is being monitored right now by the CIA. Not joking. But when you travel to those countries, meaning the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and then, of course, the mother of all of them, Great Britain, they're all under attack in exactly the same way. And I would say of the ones I've been to 4 out of 5, I'm not going to New Zealand for a while until my rage cools down. Not that I have anything against New Zealand, but as I would punish an errant child, I'm not going to reward that kind of behavior. Electing a person like that, I'm sorry, we're in a timeout for about 10 years until I can go there. Ron, I'm serious. It just sends the wrong message. You elect Jacinda Ardern and I show up and stay in your hotels? That's not how it works. No.
The way this whole conversation is framed, the conversation about mass migration in my country is submit or you're a racist, okay? You hate migrants. And this is another one of those things that I've really thought about because I've been accused of it. And here's my conclusion, and it's heartfelt. Not only do I not hate migrants, I'm really flattered. I live in an amazing country. The whole world wants to come to my country, and now has. And I don't blame them a second. If I lived in Burkina Faso, I'd want to get to Boston, like, immediately. On my way to California. Like, why wouldn't I want that? Yeah, they put him in a hotel, exactly. You get a free cell phone and airplane tickets and housing vouchers. Are you joking? Yeah. But it's also I live in a really beautiful country, like, actually beautiful. And so the fact that the rest of the world wants to live there is not offensive to me. It's highly flattering. It's like someone says, your wife is really hot. Well, thank you. I mean, you can't have her, but yeah. I'm glad you noticed. I think so too. So it is not an attack on migrants to say, I don't want millions of new people living in my country, because if you bring them here, I can't afford to live here, neither can my kids. And all of a sudden, I can't afford a house in the country I grew up in, that my ancestors built, and my kids have no hope of it. Yesterday I was talking to Australians, I was like, man, I want to move to, I'm so impressed, I'm being sincere. I'm never going to leave America, but if I ever did, I would be here in a second, but I can't afford it. It's ridiculous. I was like, and then I got my stupid iPhone out, and I'm like trying to do the conversion. I was like, no, obviously the pesos or whatever your currency is, I was like, it doesn't.
But it doesn't take everybody to change the society. If a small percentage of people firmly decide that they will not violate what is sacred to them, they will not worship false gods, they will not betray their own conscience and allow their families and their country to be destroyed, and under no circumstances will they participate in an immoral system. If a small group of people, 10% of your population does that, I don't know, Gandhi kicked the British out of India after 300 years. It wasn't that hard. Wearing a loincloth. That actually happened. And it's happened time and again. So my strong advice to you, and I'll stop with this, remember what the consequences are, what's at stake. It's totally real. It's not your imagination. It's not your if they're telling you it's not your country, they're going to take it away from you, period. 2, you can't let that happen because it's too nice, and there are future generations of Australians who have the right to live as you lived. And 3, you don't have to hurt anybody, and you shouldn't hurt anybody. Hurting other people is immoral. That's why your leaders are illegitimate, because they hurt people. And that's wrong. But you have to be willing to be hurt. That's just true. Thank you.